me, it's a book about cars, a book about car design. The one factor that joins them all together is Art Deco. Why I'm a mechanical engineer? In actual fact, I'm not a mechanical engineer. My education was in physics and applied physics, which is a little removed from mechanical engineering, but I found that really my strengths were mechanical engineering, and as my career started, I was doing mechanical engineering simply because I loved it and was good at it. So I tended to get it moved towards the engineering and away from the scientific. I got involved with industrial designers, particularly industrial designers that were transportation designers. And for about 20 years I was offering engineering services to industrial designers, and at the same time I was teaching at a design college, teaching engineering to industrial designers. So I got heavily involved with the thought processing of design and learned to understand and recognize design. I think probably they were the highlights, those years when I was involved with design people, and the skills that they taught me. For example, they taught me, or I was taught to do industrial sculpture, to actually do the clay sculpting for cars and for the transportation projects that we were involved in. That was really exciting because I love working with my hands. I've always worked on my own cars, and I'm creative with my hands. Well, before I left England 45 years ago, I was fairly heavily involved with the vintage car movement and had several pre-war cars of my own, and so that was always with me, a love of the vintage cars, a love of the design that there was in those cars. Even though I didn't understand design at the time, I do now, and I know what was exciting me then. When I moved to Canada, the whole environment changed, and I got involved with club racing, and did some club racing myself and the organising side of it. And then family came along, and the old car movement sort of disappeared for a while. Once the family had grown up and left home, then I was free to look at other things, and memories started coming back, and I started, because having an old car was no longer accessible to me, or reasonably accessible to me in Canada. But there were some of the memories, and in particular the memories of one car, which was, I now know it was a Triumph Gloria flow-free, which I didn't know what it was then, but I remember it's such a beautiful shape. I loved it, and I determined to sort of follow up and find out what it was. So I did, and I contacted the Triumph Owners Club, and got some of their members in Canada, and they put me in touch with some of their British members. And I finally found out what the car was, and I found out that there was one car left, which had a wonderful history. And on an earlier trip, I tried to find this car and hadn't been able to. But on this trip, I have been in contact with the owner and have finally photographed that car, and hopefully that car will appear on the cover of the book. And that's what started it all. Having found that one car, and then I realized that there were many other cars at the same time by different manufacturers that had the same look, the same streamlined styling, I call it. But it's generally known these days as airline cars. People call them airline cars even though they weren't sold as such. The Art Deco movement and its expression in car design was very definitely a worldwide thing. Art Deco itself was totally worldwide, and in every aspect of life, really. Certainly every aspect of design was affected by it. And the first 3 chapters of my book, I try to explain that and the worldwide aspects of it. how it affected cars was different in every country. We probably think of French design around in the mid-30s as the typical Art Deco car design, and maybe it was, but to me that was the French expression of it. Now the British expression of it was just as distinctive and just as different from anything else. And that's really what I know, what I have researched and what I understand. And even though I do touch on one or two other cars from different countries, I really believe that was very little influence, except in one or two specific cases, from abroad. Most of it was influence from other designers in this country, particularly from the coach builders, coach building designers. I'd like to say it was just waiting for me to write this book, but I don't know. It's a question I've asked myself many times. This seems to be a niche I've found that hasn't been written about before in depth. There has been a lot of people have talked about streamlined design. Nobody has covered it as thoroughly as this and covered all the models that were available with streamlined styling. There was a series of articles in the Automobile magazine within the last year. Jonathan Wood, I believe, covered it and covered it well, but didn't cover it in depth. So I've tried to give a lot more depth to the subject and made it a book. Well, my first car, which I would have got in about 1958, probably 57, was a 1934 Austin 7. Most people at that time started off with Austin 7s. And then I went to my Airline car, which was a 1937 Standard 9, one of the flying standards. Then I had a 1929 Lee Francis, and I spent 2 or 3 very happy years with that car. That's probably the one I loved most. It was my daily transport. It was a beautiful car. I loved it. It was a V-type. Had originally been, or earlier had been burnt out and had been rebuilt as a road-going special 4-seat tourer. I loved it. After that, I had a 1934 Rolls-Royce 2025, which was a big step, but again introduced me to a different side of vintage thoroughbred motoring. Loved them all. Very strong memories of all of them. Well, I don't think it has any effect now, but there is a lot of people that love old cars now and that love old car design, and that will love this book, because these are very distinctive cars, very unusual, and yet they're old cars, and they're all part of the whole old car movement. They have been restored, or a lot of them have been restored and are run on a regular basis, some of them even on a daily basis. I had a ride in one just last week, and just excited me so much. I haven't ridden in a pre-war car for many years. It was so exciting. I love talking about it.